My story. I'm 89 years old, as I tell people, going on 59, because I really don't. I have no sense of possibly waking up on the wrong side of the grass anytime soon, because I really have so much to do. I'm so busy. I've told a story very often when I'm giving a speech about the wonderful comedian George Burns, who on his 95th birthday, a reporter asked him, "Mr. Burns, do you ever worry about dying?" And he said, I can't die now. I'm booked. Well, I'm booked. And I love it.
James Flaherty is a walking, living, breathing testimonial to the power of embracing life. At 89 years old, he's working on his 10-year plan. Come get inspired. Upset this notion of quote unquote retirement and replace it with the idea of building your very best life. Jim, welcome to Bump in the Road. If you would, tell us your story.
Oh, I'm on?
You're on.
Oh, my goodness. Well, good morning, Pat. Thank you. Um, my story. I'm 89 years old, as I tell people, going on 59, because I really don't. I have no sense of possibly waking up on the wrong side of the grass anytime soon, because I really have so much to do. I'm so busy. I've told a story very often when I'm giving a speech about the wonderful comedian George Burns, who on his 95th birthday, a reporter asked him, "Mr. Burns, do you ever worry about dying?" And he said, I can't die now. I'm booked. Well, I'm booked. And I love it. I think as you grow older, if you are still part of life, if you're still curious, if you still want to learn something, if you still want to try something new, you don't have time to grow old. You really don't. I mean, I've written, I just finished my fifth book, and I've written three of them in my 80s. First, in my late 70s, I wrote two fiction novels. Now I've written three books about aging cheerfully and productively. And I've also created a TV series and a screenplay. I need an agent. In case one of you is a world famous agent, give me a call. But you know, life is good and life changes. You know, our life is full of transitions. Life is never should be just a static one line, one path your whole life. It changes. You're a young wife or a young husband, and you're raising children, and you do this, and you're climbing up that invisible ladder, if there is such a thing in your profession. And I've done all that things. I've raised my children. I have four millennial grandsons and two half Japanese great grandsons. Um, and and I think, wow, what a blessing. And I never expected to be 89 years old. I mean, times have changed. We are all demographically, we are growing older as a world, which is wonderful, because now they've discovered where they used to say the most productive years for man or woman was between 40 and 50. Now they're saying between 70 and 80. And
I've heard
60 and
that
70,
number
60
too.
and
Yeah.
70 is second place, and 40 to 50 is third place. You know, so it's not over. You know, I have a line. I can't remember whether I wrote the line or not, but it's a line I like. I use it. I want people to remember the band won't stop playing till you stop dancing. You know, so as long as you can wake up every day and say, hot damn, I've got another opportunity to see, hear, taste, touch, speak, share, love. And hopefully that you will do something good for another person. That's another strong belief I have, that the best thing you can do for yourself is to do something expecting nothing in return, to put a hand out to help somebody else. If you know of lonely seniors, for goodness sake, give them a phone call once a week or every other week. Just say, how are you doing? Remind them of something fun you did 20 years ago. Try to get them to go to the library or to volunteer at the hospital or to take up painting or learn Spanish or do something. Try to get them back to life, because loneliness, now the doctors are saying loneliness is more dangerous than cigarettes. I mean, you can't, isolation is a very terrible and frightening thing. So, is that enough about me?
Well, why do you think we're more productive as we get older?
Tell me that again, Pat.
Why do you actually, let me rephrase the question. Why do you think we have the opportunity to become more productive as we get older?
Well, actually, I think even though I fought technology like as everyone did in my generation, with the advent of technology and just the changing societal boundaries, there are many, many more opportunities to be involved as
Yes.
with age. You can, whether you're volunteering at your hospital or your church, you can also be online. You can join discussion groups. You can become a coach, a consultant, a mentor. I do a lot of speaking to high school and college groups in the area, because the kids are so amazed that anybody my age can still walk out on the stage that they listen to me. You know, uh, there are no limits anymore. You really, I know what I want to tell you. I'm a great believer that in each one of us, and all of you out there, you have a goal, a private goal or purpose within you. Some people recognize their goal early on. They say, I'm a writer, and that's what I'm going to do. And they give their all to being a writer, which is terrific and very fortunate if you know that ahead of time. But if you find yourself sitting at home saying, I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow, I don't really have anything to do, I'm getting bored with myself, look inside yourself and say, what is it I really wanted to be? Did I really want to be a painter? Guess what? It's not too late to take painting lessons. It's not too late to learn, if you want to learn all about music. You could study it all. And now you can do it all at home with the advent of computers to make it easier. Although, whenever possible, I urge all of you to reach out and make connections. Call people, have people over for lunch. I had a group of women, that I knew up here in the area. I live up in the boonies in New York State, and small towns all around us. And they were really complaining about the fact that, oh, nobody's doing anything. I said, why don't you get together and hire somebody to come in once a week to give you a cooking lesson? And they did. They formed a cooking club, and they are having the time of their life. And then they cook something elaborate, and then they sit down and have that meal. And they've created a great companionship and friendship among themselves. And they will, guess what? They'll all live longer. All statistics show that the more people you know, the more connections you have, the longer you live. You want to hear another funny statistic, Pat, that people say, huh? Is it really true? And I swear to you it is. That if you go to a church or a house of worship, a church, a mosque, a temple, whatever, 4 times a month, that's not a big drain on your time, you will live 4 to 8 years longer.
Well, sure, because it provides community and
That
curiosity,
of
conversation.
of meditating, of recognizing that there is a higher power, that the world does not revolve around you, that you're not the most important person in the world. Maybe that's what works, but it does work. It really does.
Earlier you mentioned being bored. I've always said that if I'm bored, it's because I'm becoming boring.
Precisely. I have another, it's a trick I use, but it's become an absolute, I'm a devoted habit now. Every evening, I make a list of the 6 or 7 things I want to accomplish the next day. And if I'm traveling, I leave it on my bathroom sink so that I have to see it in the morning. And if I'm here at home, I leave it on my computer keyboard. And it so that I don't have to think about them during the night because I've already written them down. I say, okay, I've got to call. These are a couple of household things, but then I must change chapter 4 in the new book, and I must call the cover designer for that book. It tells you the things that you know that you have to accomplish that day. It's very, very, very important to always not just make busy work for yourself, but to know that you accomplish something every day. It can't just be another day of, oh, I got through the day. Big deal. Getting through the day is not that much fun.
No, I think people though need to dig deep in order to look within in order to find out what really motivates them. And I think that's hard in our society because our society is so oriented towards, quick response and satisfaction on social media or whatever, that it doesn't lend itself towards the introspection that I think is really needed to find your path.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, the old expression, which I certainly did not write, a very old expression, you are as old as you think, is absolutely true. This controls practically everything in your body. Yes, I realize that your family DNA may say, guess what? You will have a family tendency toward diabetes or cancer or heart disease, in which case you obviously should be taking steps to combat that and see the right doctor, the right clinic, do the right diet, do all those things. It's very important. I mean, you can't ignore it. Somebody said, if you think of your body as an old refrigerator, now and then parts rust out. But if you take care of it, it will go on functioning for many, many years. I mean, I never expected to be 89. And people say, well, what do you do, Jim, to maintain your health? I work at it. I have only 2 meals a day, very healthy, very delicious, really delicious meals. I do 30 minutes of serious exercise every morning, every single morning. I try to get enough sleep. Always have enough time to read at night before I go to sleep. Try not to watch too much television. That's a horrible statistic, Pat. They say something like, I'll have the numbers wrong, 65% of all people over the age of 65 watch TV 48 hours a week. That's too much. I mean, I love to watch a good show on TV or a good movie, but to watch it every day, 6, 7, 8 hours,
No.
can't do
I
it.
quit watching TV over a decade ago, and it's one of the best things I ever did
Yeah,
because it not only does it frees your attention even more than your time.
right.
So all of a sudden, your attention can go towards whatever it is that interests you.
Yeah. I I've told people, I said, a really wonderful thing to do. Of course, I'm speaking again from my own heart. Is to start writing. They say, "Oh, I'm not a writer. I can't write." I said, "Of course you can write. When you were little, you wrote. If you went away to school back in the old days before computers, we would write 1 letter a week home to mom, and she would write 1 letter back to us. Remember, I was born and raised in Coral Gables, Florida, before air conditioning. I lived in South Florida before there was air conditioning, and no TV. We bought the first TV on the block. I was 15 years old before I saw a TV, and I was so grateful that I was able to raise my own children, my babies who are now 62 and 64, still my babies, to raise them without a cell phone in their hands. It would have
No.
made me nuts if they were looking at a cell phone instead of looking me straight in the eye when I was talking to them. But I don't know. I got off the subject there. Writing. I want you to get back to writing. If you will start writing right now and say, just start telling the story of your life, and go back as far as you can in your memory and write what happened. Write 1 or 2 pages of it, and then the next day write another section. And what you're going to do is create something that your grandchildren and your children will absolutely love. And who knows, you may find as you do it, there's a book inside of you, because you always loved the fact that your grandfather was an explorer, or you loved the fact that you were told that you were going to die of cancer 20 years ago and you didn't. And so now you write a book about it. And it's terrific. It heals you from within, and you get to share your story with other people. It's a very good thing to do. I mean, obviously I love it. I've always been a writer. This was my very last book, Embrace Your Age. You can be better than ever. I just finished one called Loving Longevity. So I'm going to be working on that in the coming months. But
No, you talk about telling your story, and I think it's really important to tell your story, but also to tell it from several perspectives, because sometimes we get stuck in a negative story loop, and that isn't any more real than a magical story loop. So it's what do you choose? How do you choose to tell your story?
well, you know, I always love the name of your program, Pat. A bump in the road. Age is in itself a huge bump in the road. Like, I'm going to interrupt this part of it to tell you, I saw a fascinating interview the other day with a woman named Ellen Langer, who wrote a psychologist, a very famous Harvard professor, and she wrote a book called The Mindful Body. And she said, if little children have grandparents who are out there doing and writing and living and participating, they will grow up their whole life not fearing age. If the grandparents are the old traditional, shaky, fetal position, sitting, watching television, doing nothing, they grow up from age 50. They start fearing the fact that they are growing older. I know people who in their 50s say, oh God, it's over for me. I mean, any minute I'm going to turn into a vegetable. And I say, no, I don't want to hear that. I really, I just don't want to hear that. And I try to get people in groups to talk about their story. Why do you think you are so old? And then we try to get them to say what they've been doing with their life, and say, that doesn't sound so bad. If you expand on it and make it a little wider, a little deeper, you can have a life.
I think there are a lot of benefits actually to getting older.
Absolutely.
What are some of yours?
Well, in this new book that I'm finishing, the subtitle after Loving Longevity, I say, make the next 10 to 20 years your best. And people say, how can you say that, Jim? I say, I'm 89 and I have a 10-year plan. I said, I can very honestly, absolutely dead God's truth, I can tell you that I'm having more fun now than I was in my 70s. I'm having a wonderful time. Okay, you can say, fine, that's easy for you to talk, Flaherty. You're healthy. Yeah, I'm healthy because I work at it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't wake up with mental pains. And if I have any physical pains, they aren't enough to acknowledge. All I know is that I'm here, I'm awake, and I can do something. I can come in and do something. People said, well, why don't we know you? You could I had a villa in Acapulco for 25 years. You could float around your pool with a margarita in your hand all day. And I said, if you really know me, you know that I could only do that for about 15 minutes. And then I'd say, okay, let's get up and do something, shall we? Let's produce, let's create, let's discuss, let's make something happen worthwhile.
I'm at an age where all my peers are retiring, and they are not taking many of them, most of them, are not taking advantage of what they could be doing, and it astonishes me. I really don't get it.
I can't, I can't believe people your age are retiring. I mean, what are you, 45?
Let's try 67.
What, 67?
Yeah,
Honey, you hide it very well.
I have good
And
lighting on this
my
podcast.
eyes are very good.
Good lighting. Good lighting is your friend.
You know, I don't know. The idea of somebody said, "Are you ever going to retire, Jim?" I said, "I did. I retired last year." They said, "You did?" I said, "Yeah, I bought 4 Michelin tires for my 1920 Blazer." You know, and it's perfectly fine. It runs like new. You know, that's as close as I can come to retirement. I don't understand the word. It's you can reframe your life every day. You know, you can't go back to the beginning and start over. We know that. But you can start right now and change the end of the story. You can start today and say, today, oh, I know. It's one of my favorite things. I do this with a big group. I'll walk out on the stage hoping that I remembered to zip up my fly and stand there for a minute and I'll say, do you know that right this very minute that I'm talking to you, you are the oldest you've ever been? And everybody goes, oh my God. I say, but before you start planning the guest list for your funeral, may I point something else out? You are also at this very moment the youngest you will ever be. So therefore, start today and let's plan the next decade. What's going to happen tomorrow that's going to make tomorrow better? How can you make your life better, your family's life better, your community better? We all have a part, you know, it's a messy world. We know that. The world gets a little messy, a little muddy. And sometimes goodness can start in a very small way. I say to people, you know, take a job that is not terribly emotionally rewarding, like the nice lady who bags your groceries in the grocery store. The next time you're there, smile at her and say, aren't you nice putting all my frozen goods in one bag? And you're so fast and you're so efficient. Thank you so much. And she will smile at you. And what's
Yes,
more, she'll turn to the next person in line and say, may I help you? I said, a little courtesy, a little goodness, a little giving is infectious. You know,
it is.
it helps other people.
It's very infectious. As a matter of fact, that energy that you put out is really important because you don't know who it's going to touch, where, or when. So, what are you putting out? Good energy or not so good energy?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, uh, the great. Oh, I know what I'll tell you. It's one of my favorite things. I was raised with the golden rule, which started long before Confucius, and then it was actually picked up almost word for word in the Bible. Uh, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Well, if you lay that on a 4 or 5 year old, they'll go, huh? I mean, it's a nice idea, but it's awkward language. So as I grew older and had children, fortunately, I was young. I was 24, I guess, when my first child was born. I rewrote the golden rule for both for myself and for my children. And I was delighted to see that both daughters used it when they were raising their son. You what you give. Okay. Give a sympathetic ear, a generous heart, a meaningful smile, a warm hug, guess what? You get it back. If all you do is bitch and moan and complain and demand and order, that also comes back and bites you somewhere below your belt buckle behind you. I mean, so give good, you get good. And that's a nice, easy way to live life. And you would be amazed how much that works. Just the simple act of courtesy. I was always the one to pick up people's bags or to open doors. And I still, by the way, on airplanes, on jets, I always put all the ladies' luggage in the overhead bin because they can't reach it, you know. And I don't see anybody else volunteering to do it. So 89-year-old Jim is up there putting bags out for people. It's simple courtesy.
Yeah.
It's
And people aren't doing it. I was on a flight recently and I was having trouble getting my bag up into that overhaul bin. And there was quite a very significant pause. And finally, a gentleman came up, just here, just, batted the bag and it was up, no problem.
right.
It was amazing, though, that everybody would just sit and watch and not move.
Right. I don't understand that. And that now I also smile because I am elderly. Now and then I'll be on maybe a crowded train or something, or have a bag, and somebody will say, "May I help you, sir? May I take that?" And I say, "Well, yes, thank you." I take it. I accept it very gratefully. Listen, I'm not about to turn it down.
Well, and you just made that person's day. They did something good, and they feel good for it.
Absolutely. I was in New Mexico a few weeks ago at a workshop with Modern Elder Academy, an organization I love, and I had to drive across New Mexico. I don't know New Mexico, and I left Las Cruces where I was visiting a friend who's been in poor health, and I had a half a tank of gas. And I thought, good, I'll drive an hour and a half, and then I'll stop and fill up that tank and empty this tank, And on that 250-mile road to Albuquerque, there is not one gas station. There is nothing. And I'm used to the East where, every 50 miles
Oh,
or
no,
so,
no, no,
there's a
no.
major something. Right?
Out west,
And
the rule of thumb is
here
if
I
your
am.
gas tank is half empty, fill it.
I saw it go from half full to quarter full to finally said low fuel. I'm proactive. I pulled off the side of the road, put the flashing lights, and stood behind the car, waving my arm. 20 cars passed me, trying not to see me. And one pulled over, and a sturdy young guy got out. Turned out he was a military guy in civvies. He and his wife were on their way to Albuquerque to see her newly widowed father. And he looked at the gas gauge and he said, "Follow us, sir." And we went off the highway and back in country roads, and we finally came to a gas station. And because I was getting very nervous about it. Nobody knew where I was. Nobody was waiting for me, and I thought, somehow I thought calling 911 in the middle of nowhere is not going to help that much. Anyway, I got there and I thought, what to say to these kids? I came out, they were all of 27 years old. They, really sweet kids. I came out and I said, I gave them a copy of the book for their father. I said, Dad will like it, brace your age. It'll be helping. There's one chapter called How Are You Going to Handle It When They Die? And so I said, I want you both to know something. God has a big book. Well, maybe it's a Word file backed up in a giant computer, but I think it's a big book full of the names of all of the people in the world that if they are going through life and they see somebody who is hurt or frightened or hungry or thirsty, they stop and put their hand out to help, expecting nothing in return. And those are what God calls the really good people. And that's you two. And I know you'll always be good. You're always going to be that way. And I want you to know that somebody's going to be looking out for you because you are that kind of person. Gave them both a hug. And I was so grateful for them. And I thought, that's precisely what we're supposed to do in life. We're supposed to go, and if you see somebody that's thirsty, stop and give them some water. Put your hand out, do something good for people. And it really meant a great deal to me. It was one of the highlights of the trip. As wonderful as the workshop was, I really was terrifically moved by that.
As we get older, there's this societal idea that there's something called retirement. Do we need to rethink this idea?
Yes, we laugh about the word. We all had adolescence. Now we've created a new word, middle essence, and now there's elder essence. And retirement really should not exist as a word. It's perhaps they can say, we're going to retire you from this position, or we're going to retire you from this particular industry, but you can move on and do something else. I'm trying to think. There was a wonderful, wonderful book called From Strength to Strength by Arthur Brooks. And he talks about, you go through life with what he called flexible intelligence, where you're opening doors and climbing mountains and creating and inventing. And then you reach a point, he said, in all professions, there's a point of decline. It doesn't mean you know less. It's just there's a point of decline in your life. And at that point, you should have crystallized intelligence, when you can start helping other people do their job better, when you can start mentoring, you can start sharing, you can start writing, you can start teaching, you can start being a significant part of a community, instead of retiring. Retiring is something you do. I'm retiring. It means I'm going to bed. It means I'm going to go into my bedroom and I'm going to read for an hour, which I try to do every night, and then go to sleep. But I don't think retirement should be a word anymore. We should get rid of it. Exit out.
I think we need not only another word, but another methodology for approaching that part of life, because you bring all this knowledge and wisdom from all these decades of living on the earth. My
Right.
gosh, you have to package that into something usable.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I again, I feel guilty at times, Pat, because I say, well, you've been so fortunate, and then I think, well, wait a minute, Jim, nobody gave you nothing. Because my father died when I was very young, and I squeaked through college. I was a concert bassoonist. That's what paid my tuition through college, to get a degree in communications. And then I did very well. I was in advertising. If you saw the TV series Mad Men, that was me. That was the story of my life, except as I told people, there was no hanky-panky in my office. Never. I did not allow it. My office was where we solved marketing problems and did great creative work. But I was fortunate. Was I brilliant at what I did? I don't know. Or did I just work harder? Which, by the way, that brings me to one of my favorite expressions of all times, from Noel Coward, of all people. Work is more fun than fun. I love that line. And I did it. I guess I was a very happy, cheerful workaholic. And I don't think that took anything away from my abilities to be a loving father and to take care of family and friends and do all those things. But I don't think ever in my life did I get up thinking, oh God, another day of work, I'm going to kill myself. I hate it so much. No, I commuted. I lived outside of New York. I took the train every day, and I went to work. I also laughed at that. My first job in New York, I took home $200 a month after taxes out of college with no allowance from home. So I was poor, dead poor. Cut to 10, 12 years later, I was in a corner office job in New York, earning a very hefty 6-figure salary, and I still went to work an hour and a half early, which I had done back when I was taking home $200 a month. And I think because of that, because of looking at every day as an opportunity to learn something new, to contribute something, to be better at what you were doing, or to be a better boss, or to be a better employee, whatever it takes, to get the satisfaction of every day of saying, good, great, I did a good job today. Important.